"Pretend you're our father," one of the identical girls whispered beside his tea. A guard froze, and executive aides sneered that service staff didn't belong near VIPs, and hands reached for radios. The lone maintenance worker didn't plead or protest. He only looked up, calm enough to unsettle them. Because three triplets were gripping his sleeve like he was the only safe person in the room. "By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below." This wasn't about a cafe table. It was about who gets believed when power speaks first. Before anyone understood why the girls needed a lie, the owner's influence was already moving. El Rahman worked nights where guests never looked, service corridors, boiler rooms, the machinery that kept luxury breathing. He'd stepped into the cafe for 10 minutes of tea before his shift, uniform still on, boots damp from a leak repair. He chose a corner table near the staff entrance out of habit. Stay small, stay employed, stay invisible. Then the triplets appeared, breathless and wet-haired, scanning the room like hunted animals. Their sameness made them uncanny. 3 copies of fear. They didn't run to a waiter. They came straight to him. "Please," the smallest said, voice shaking. "Just pretend," the boldest added. "If they find us, they'll split us up." The guard shifted closer. The aide leaned in, perfume and authority, her smile sharp. "Sir, you can't sit here. And you can't involve yourself with children you don't know. Stand up." Adil felt the reflex to obey, the reflex that had kept him surviving since his family broke apart. He crushed it. He angled his chair so the girls were behind him, not exposed. His voice stayed low. "They came to me." "That's not an answer," the aide snapped. One triplet's fingers trembled against his wrist. Another kept glancing toward the lobby doors, as if someone was about to burst through them. Adil noticed it all. Fear wasn't random. It pointed somewhere. He set his cup down carefully. "Nobody's taking anyone," he said. "Not until we understand what's happening," whispers ran. The hotel's polished calm began to fracture, and Adil could feel the crowd deciding what it wanted to see. He refused both roles they offered him. He only kept the girls close enough that they could breathe. Heels clicked from the lobby, measured and expensive. Even before she stepped into view, people straightened. Victoria Halden entered with the kind of composure that came from owning the building and everyone's fear of displeasing her. Her eyes swept the scene. Guard, aide, 3 children clinging, 1 maintenance worker in the wrong place. Her gaze paused on his uniform like it was a stain. "What is going on?" she asked, not looking at him when she spoke. The aide rushed to explain. "Miss Halden," he's refusing to cooperate. "The girls are claiming he's their father." Sila lifted her chin and repeated the sentence that made the room flinch. "Pretend you're our father." A ripple of discomfort moved through the cafe. Adil felt his pulse thud. He could deny it. He could step aside and let the system roll in, neat and official, and swallow 3 frightened girls without anyone ever hearing why they ran. But the triplets held him like a promise. And something older than his uniform, older than the grief he carried, refused to let them be handled like a problem to remove. He met Victoria's gaze. "They're terrified," he said simply. Her mouth tightened. "Security, separate them. We'll call child services. This will be handled properly." Properly sounded clean. Properly sounded final. The guard took a step. The triplets recoiled as if they'd already been grabbed once tonight. Adil lifted a hand, palm open, stopping the motion without aggression. "Don't touch them like that," he said. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You don't tell my staff what to do. You fix leaks. You replace bulbs. You don't play hero in my cafe." Her words weren't loud, but they landed hard because everyone heard them and no one challenged them. Adil felt the heat of humiliation crawl up his neck. He swallowed it. He glanced once toward the ceiling corner where a camera watched, then back to her. "Then let's keep it clean," he said, voice steady. "Bring whoever you want, but do it in front of everyone." For the first time, Victoria hesitated, not from compassion, but from calculation. "Fine," she said at last. "Call Marta Klein. Now!" The aide hurried away. The cafe filled with a low buzz, people turning fear into spectacle. Adil ignored it. He shifted his chair slightly, creating space for the triplets to hide behind his shoulder, and kept his breathing slow so theirs could follow. Outside the lobby doors, a siren swelled, drawing closer. Every second. The siren grew louder, slicing through the cafe's polished hush until conversations collapsed into uneasy silence. Heads turned toward the glass doors as red-blue light pulsed across marble and chrome, reflections jittering like exposed nerves. One of the triplets whimpered, pressing her face into his sleeve. He felt it. How fast fear could spread when uniforms and authority converged. "It's okay," he murmured, not promising outcomes, only steadiness. His hand stayed open, visible, none threatening. Victoria Halden didn't flinch at the siren. She checked her watch instead, impatience sharpened into a smile that suggested everything was proceeding on schedule. "Good," she said to no one in particular. "We'll resolve this quickly." Security shifted positions, forming a loose semicircle that cut the cafe in half, VIPs on one side, labor and confusion on the other. The line was clear enough to bruise. A server hesitated with a tray, unsure where to stand. The maintenance worker noticed the tremor in her wrist and offered a small nod as if to say, "Keep breathing." The doors slid open. 2 officers entered, their presence instantly rearranging the room. Behind them came a woman in a charcoal coat, hair pulled tight, a leather folder under her arm. She scanned faces with a practiced detachment that felt colder than the air outside. "Marta Klein," Victoria announced, finally turning her full attention to the scene. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Marta's eyes moved to the children. The triplets shrank together, 3 shadows merging into one. "I understand there are minors without guardians," she said. Her tone was measured, procedural. "I'll need to ask a few questions." "Of course," Victoria replied. "We're very concerned about their safety." The maintenance worker felt the word safety twist. He adjusted his stance so the girls were shielded from the semicircle. "They asked for help," he said. "That's what you're seeing." Marta looked at him for the first time, gaze pausing on his uniform, boots, the grease mark on his sleeve. "And you are?" "Someone they ran to," he answered. He didn't offer more. "Not yet." Victoria sighed, the sound of a woman indulging a nuisance. "He's an employee. Night maintenance. He was asked to step away and refused." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Phones appeared, screens glowing like small moons. Public space had shifted. This was no longer private management. He noticed and felt a flicker of grim relief. Witnesses mattered. Marta crouched slightly to be level with the girls. "Sweethearts, I need to take you somewhere safe. We'll make sure you're all right." "No," Noor blurted, voice breaking. "They'll separate us." Marta paused. "That's not." "They always say that," Lena cut in, clutching his sleeve harder. "Please." The worker felt their grip tighten and resisted the urge to promise what he couldn't guarantee. Instead, he asked Marta quietly, "What's the intake timeline?" Victoria's head snapped toward him. "That's not your concern." Marta hesitated, surprised by the question. "Immediate protective custody," she said. "Assessment follows." "And emergency kinship consideration?" he asked. Calm. Curious. "Before relocation." Marta's brow creased. "Who told you about that?" "Someone who reads policies," he said, "and watches kids panic." Victoria stepped forward, heels clicking like punctuation. "This is becoming disruptive. We'll take it out of the cafe." He shook his head once. "If you do it here." The words weren't loud, but they landed. Several guests leaned in. A concierge stopped pretending to organize brochures. Even the officers glanced at Marta, waiting. "By the way, if this moment's got you holding your breath, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Stories like this turn when you least expect it." Marta straightened, eyes flicking to the phones. "We can proceed here," she said carefully. "For transparency." Victoria's smile thinned. "Fine." The worker inhaled slowly, grounding himself. He could feel the weight of old habits returning. Observe, slow the tempo, let the system show its seams. He asked, "What precipitated the removal tonight?" Marta consulted her folder. "A report of potential exploitation linked to a donor network." "Linked how?" he pressed. "Specifics matter." Victoria cut in. "That's confidential. So is panic," he replied. But it's right in front of us. One officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, maybe we should. We should finish, Victoria snapped. The siren outside faded, replaced by the low hum of the building. The triplet's breathing synced with his as he kept his posture relaxed, hands visible, voice steady. He wasn't fighting them. He was making them talk. Marta exhaled. There was an attempt to move the children earlier tonight without proper authorization, she admitted. They fled. A gasp traveled the room. Victoria stiffened. That's an oversimplification. Then clarify it, the worker said gently. Here. For a moment, no one spoke. Cameras rolled. The line between authority and accountability wavered. Marta looked at the children again, then back at him. We need to verify identities, she said, and ensure they stay together during assessment. Good, he said. That's a start. Victoria's eyes burned into him, calculating, offended. You're overstepping. He met her gaze, unflinching. I'm standing still. The cafe felt smaller now, walls closing in with the weight of attention. Somewhere above them an elevator chimed. The triplets loosened their grip just enough to breathe. And for the first time since the siren arrived, the outcome didn't feel pre-written. The cafe held its breath after Marta's admission, the kind of silence that felt heavier than shouting. A glass clinked somewhere behind the counter too loud, and the maintenance worker felt the triplets tense again, their small bodies reacting before their minds caught up. He stayed still, anchoring them, aware of every eye tracking the exchange like it was a staged performance. Victoria recovered first. She always did. There's no need to dramatize this, she said, smoothing the front of her jacket as if order could be pressed back into place. These girls wandered into a restricted area during an internal matter. My team acted responsibly. Marta didn't answer right away. She flipped a page in her folder, the paper rasping in the quiet. The report says they were moved toward a private exit, she said. That isn't standard. They were frightened, Victoria replied. We were preventing a scene. The worker tilted his head slightly. Scenes happen when people feel trapped. Victoria's eyes snapped to him. You're enjoying this far too much, he shook his head. I don't enjoy fear. One of the officers shifted his weight, uncomfortable, guests whispered, speculation blooming. Phones stayed raised. The moment had slipped past private management and into something harder to control. Marta looked at the triplets again. Did someone tell you to leave? She asked gently. All three looked to the man beside them, instinctive. He didn't nod. He didn't speak. He let them choose. They said we were going somewhere else, Selah whispered. We didn't want to go. With who? Marta asked. The girls hesitated. Victoria's stare bored into them like a warning. The worker felt the familiar urge to shield, but he kept his posture neutral, giving them space to be brave. A lady, Noor said. From the offices upstairs. A ripple moved through the crowd. Several heads turned toward Victoria. That's enough, Victoria snapped. This is inappropriate. You're interrogating children in public. You asked for transparency, Marta said, tension threading her voice. We're here. Victoria exhaled sharply, recalibrating. Fine, take them into the conference room. Away from spectators. No, the worker said calmly, the word cut clean. Marta looked at him. Sir, if they move, he continued, it should be somewhere they can see exits. Somewhere open. Victoria laughed once, brittle. You don't dictate procedure. I'm not, he said. I'm preventing panic. Marta hesitated again, caught between protocol and optics. She glanced at the officers, then at the phones. We can stay, she said finally. For now. Victoria's jaw tightened. This is becoming a circus. Circles close when no one listens, he replied. He felt the triplets relax a fraction, their grip loosening as the immediate threat paused. He took that as permission to breathe. His mind cataloged details automatically. Positions, exits, authority flow, who deferred to whom. Old instincts surfaced, unwelcome but useful. Marta cleared her throat. We need identification, she said. For everyone involved. The worker reached slowly into his pocket, mindful of how sudden movements were read. He placed his staff badge on the table, face up. Name. Photo. Maintenance department. Nothing impressive. Nothing threatening. Victoria smirked. See? Employee. He met her eyes without challenge. Yes. Marta examined the badge, then looked up. And the children? They don't have theirs, Lena said quickly. They took our bags. Victoria's head turned sharply. Who took their bags? The aide at the edge of the group stiffened. Standard intake, she said. For safekeeping. Marta's lips pressed thin. That should have been documented. The worker felt the balance shift, subtle but real. He didn't push. He waited. One of the officers leaned toward Marta. Ma'am, we've got multiple witnesses now. I know, Marta murmured. Victoria's voice dropped. Dangerous. You're letting him control this. Marta looked between them, conflicted. I'm letting the situation stabilize. The worker noticed a concierge nearby, an older man with silver hair, watching him with narrowed eyes. Recognition flickered there, then vanished. Interesting. Marta addressed the crowd. We're conducting an assessment, she said. Please give us space. No one moved far, but the noise softened. The worker felt sweat cool on his back, the delayed reaction of stress. He focused on the girl's breathing, matching his pace to theirs. Victoria folded her arms. You're still out of line. He answered quietly for her alone. You're used to rooms emptying when you speak. Her eyes hardened. And you're used to being ignored. Yes, he said. Which is why I listen. For a beat, neither looked away. Marta closed her folder. I'm not authorizing removal yet, she said. We need verification. Victoria stared at her. On what basis? On the basis that something doesn't add up, Marta replied. The words landed like a crack in glass. The worker felt it. The first real fracture in certainty. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He simply stayed where power didn't expect resistance, holding the line long enough for the truth to breathe. The crack Marta created didn't shatter anything yet, but it let air in, and air had a way of changing pressure fast. The cafe didn't return to normal. It couldn't. People stayed rooted, pretending to sip drinks that had gone cold, pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. The maintenance worker felt a shift in his chest first, a subtle easing that didn't mean safety, only possibility. Victoria recovered her composure with practiced ease. If we're questioning reports now, she said smoothly, then let's do it properly. Marta, you know how these things spiral when emotion overrides process. I'm aware, Marta replied, though her voice lacked conviction. She glanced again at the triplets, noting the way they leaned toward the man beside them, not hiding anymore, just staying close. That's why we slow down. Slowing down risks exposure, Victoria countered. These girls are already frightened. The sooner they're removed from public view, the better. The word removed made Nor flinch. The worker felt it and shifted half a step, placing his body between the girls and Victoria without making a show of it. They're frightened because someone tried to move them without explanation, he said. That's not solved by more secrecy. Victoria's eyes flashed. You're assuming facts. I'm observing reactions, he replied. They don't lie. Marta rubbed her temple, caught between two gravitational pulls. We need clarity, she said. Why were they being moved tonight? Victoria gestured toward the lobby, toward the polished towers of glass and steel beyond. Because the hotel hosts donors and private partners. We have obligations. Sensitive matters are handled discreetly. Discreet isn't the same as lawful, he said gently. A murmur rolled through the cafe again. Someone coughed. A chair scraped. Phones stayed up. Victoria turned on him. You are dangerously close to defamation. He didn't rise to it. Then facts will protect you. Marta looked at Victoria. Were they scheduled for transfer? Yes, Victoria said. Through appropriate channels. The worker asked. That's none of your, Marta lifted a hand. Victoria. The use of her first name landed with weight. Victoria's jaw tightened. A private partner offered temporary housing while assessments were pending. Off-site? Marta asked. Yes. With documentation, pending. The worker exhaled slowly. Pending was a word systems used when they wanted to move faster than oversight allowed. He felt the triplets tense again, sensing danger in adult language. Pending isn't authorization, Marta said. Victoria's patience snapped. You're splitting hairs while children are at risk. From what? He asked quietly. Victoria stared at him, realizing too late that she'd stepped into an open question. From instability, she said after a beat. From? Unknown individuals. He nodded once. Like me? Yes, she said, seizing the opening. Exactly like you. The word hung there, ugly and effective. A few guests shifted, uncertainty creeping in. The worker felt the familiar sting of suspicion, the way quickly sympathy curdled when authority framed the story. Marta studied him. Sir, she said, careful, have you had contact with these children before tonight? No, he answered truthfully. They chose me. And why do you think that is? He considered the question. Because I wasn't chasing them. The concierge with silver hair watched more intently now, something like memory flickering behind his eyes. Victoria scoffed. This is absurd! You're indulging theatrics! Marta ignored her. We need to assess immediate welfare, she said. One of them looks unwell. She hasn't eaten, Selah said quickly. We ran. Marta nodded to an officer. Can we get water? And a medic. Victoria opened her mouth to object, then closed it as several guests turned sharply toward her. Optics mattered. She waved a dismissive hand. Fine. The worker felt a quiet surge of relief as a bottle of water appeared. He unscrewed the cap slowly, offering it without rushing, watching the girls sip like they'd been taught to conserve. He noticed the way Lena's hands shook, the slight pallor under Noor's eyes. Dehydration. Stress. Nothing dramatic yet, but neglect compounded fast. Marta crouched again. I need your names, she said. They gave them, voices small but steady. The worker committed them to memory, the way he always did with things that mattered. Victoria checked her phone, irritation deepening. This is taking too long. Because something's wrong, Marta said. The aide returned, whispering urgently in Victoria's ear. Color drained from Victoria's face, then hardened into resolve. We're moving this upstairs, she said. Now. No, Marta said. Firmer this time. Silence snapped into place. You don't outrank me here, Victoria hissed. I outrank the impulse to cover mistakes, Marta replied. And right now, I'm not convinced there wasn't one. The worker felt the line shift again, more decisively. He stayed quiet, letting the system argue with itself. An officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, we've got media outside. Victoria stiffened. How? Someone posted, he said, gesturing vaguely at the phones. The worker felt a grim flicker of acknowledgement. Public space had teeth. Marta stood. We're documenting everything, she said. No one leaves. Not yet. Victoria's eyes burned into the worker's. You think you're winning? He shook his head. I think they're breathing. The triplets leaned into him again, not hiding now, just trusting. Around them, the cafe felt smaller, pressure building, the truth pressing outward against polished walls that were never meant to hold it. The word documenting changed the air completely. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it landed like a lever pulled somewhere deep inside the building, shifting weight no one could put back. Staff who had been hovering at the edges straightened. Phones lifted higher, no longer sneaky but deliberate. The cafe had crossed a threshold from managed inconvenience to record. Victoria felt it immediately. Her posture stiffened, chin lifting as if height alone could reclaim control. You're overreacting, she said, voice clipped. This is a misunderstanding being inflated by theatrics. Marta didn't argue. She opened her folder again, slower now, careful. I'm logging time, location, and witnesses, she said. Standard once children are involved. One of the officers glanced at the maintenance worker. Sir, I'll need your statement. He nodded. Happy to give it. Victoria scoffed. You're indulging him. I'm following procedure, the officer replied, neutral but firm. The triplets watched everything with wide, serious eyes. They weren't crying now. Fear had sharpened into something quieter, more dangerous anticipation. The worker felt it and placed a steady hand on the table, grounding himself, grounding them. Marta looked up. Before we proceed further, I need to confirm something. Were these children ever officially signed into the hotel's care tonight? Victoria hesitated just long enough to matter. They were brought in temporarily, she said. For safety. By whom? Marta pressed. My staff. Which staff? Marta asked. Victoria exhaled sharply. This is ridiculous. Names matter, Marta said. The aide shifted, eyes flicking toward Victoria. The worker noticed the micro-movement, the way silence began to accuse louder than words. One of the triplets spoke up, voice small but clear. She said we were going upstairs, that we couldn't stay together if we didn't listen. The cafe went still. Victoria snapped, "That's enough." Marta held up a hand. "No. That's relevant." Victoria turned on the worker, anger flashing hot now. "You prompted them." He shook his head. "I didn't say a word." Marta studied him, then the children. "Did anyone threaten separation?" All three nodded. A ripple of outrage moved through the room. Someone muttered, "Jesus." Another whispered, "That's illegal." Victoria's composure cracked, just a hairline fracture, but it showed. "They misunderstood," she said. "Children do that." "Children don't invent the same fear 3 times, the worker said quietly. Marta closed her folder halfway. "Victoria," she said, carefully, "I need to know if a private partner was involved before authorization." Victoria's eyes hardened. "You're accusing me." "I'm asking," Marta replied. "Because if someone attempted an off-book transfer, that's a serious violation." Victoria leaned in, lowering her voice, but the room strained to hear anyway. "You're forgetting who funds half the programs you rely on." The worker felt a familiar chill. Money is gravity. He watched Marta absorb the pressure, saw her shoulders tense. "You're also forgetting," he said calmly. "That leverage doesn't photograph well." Several heads turned. Victoria's gaze snapped to him. "You should stop talking." He didn't. "You wanted discretion. You got witnesses instead." The concierge with silver hair stepped forward a fraction, no longer pretending neutrality. "I've worked here 20 years, he said. "I've never seen children handled like this." Victoria stared at him. "Go back to your post." "No," he said simply. That word again. "No." It traveled faster now, contagious. Marta took a breath. "I'm invoking a temporary hold," she said. "No movement until an independent review." Victoria's voice dropped to a dangerous softness. "You don't have authority for that," Marta met her eyes. "I do when there's credible risk." Victoria laughed once, sharp. "Credible according to whom?" "Him." She gestured dismissively at the maintenance worker. "He fixes pipes." The insult landed publicly, exactly as intended. The worker felt the heat rise, but he kept his tone even. "And tonight I'm fixing something else." A few guests murmured approval. Phones zoomed in. "By the way, if you want to see how moments like this flip when power overplays its hand, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next." Victoria's face flushed. "Enough. Security, clear this area." The officers didn't move. Marta looked at them. "Stand by?" The worker reached slowly into his wallet. Not theatrically. Deliberately. He pulled out a worn, folded card and placed it on the table beside his badge. It wasn't flashy. Just laminated, edges softened by time. Marta's eyes dropped to it. Her breath caught, barely audible. Victoria noticed the change instantly.
"What is that?"
Marta didn't answer right away. She picked up the card, reading once. Then again. Her posture shifted, subtle but undeniable.
"Where did you get this?"
Marta asked him. He kept his voice low. "From a life I don't talk about." Victoria stepped closer, trying to see. "This is irrelevant." Marta finally looked up, eyes sharp now, unsettled. "It's not." The room leaned in. "This identification," Marta said slowly, "matches a system credential. One I haven't seen in years." Victoria's confidence faltered. "You're mistaken." Marta shook her head. "I'm not." The worker met Victoria's gaze, not triumphantly, not cruelly, just steadily. "You wanted process," he said. "This is part of it." For the first time since she entered, Victoria looked uncertain, not frightened yet, but aware she might be standing on a floor that wasn't as solid as she'd assumed. The triplets watched Marta's face closely, sensing the shift. Lena squeezed his sleeve. "Is it okay?" she whispered. He didn't promise, but he nodded. "It's changing." Around them, the cafe buzzed with contained energy, the kind that comes right before a storm breaks or a truth surfaces. Marta held the card like it weighed more than plastic, and Victoria realized Too late. That whatever she'd tried to keep upstairs had followed her into the light. Marta held the card like it might cut her fingers, eyes flicking between the laminate and the man beside the girls. The cafe waited, a collective inhale suspended, while Victoria leaned closer, trying to read authority off a surface that refused her. Marta finally spoke, voice careful. "This credential isn't issued lightly," she said. "And it hasn't been active for a long time." She looked up. "Where did you serve?" He didn't answer immediately. He felt the triplets' eyes on him, the question heavier because it carried their fate. "I'm here now," he said instead. "And they're scared." Victoria scoffed. "This is absurd theater," she said. "You're letting a uniform confuse you." She reached for the card. Marta pulled it back. "Don't," Marta said, sharper now. "I need to verify." She turned to an officer. "Run the number. Quietly." The officer hesitated, then nodded and stepped aside, murmuring into his radio. The cafe hummed again, whispers stitching theories together. Victoria watched the maintenance worker with open hostility. "You think a plastic card changes anything?" Victoria said. "Even if it's real, it's irrelevant." She leaned in. "You're still out of your depth." He met her gaze. "Depth isn't measured by floor numbers." The concierge exhaled a laugh he tried to hide. Marta paced 2 steps away. Phone pressed to her ear now, voice low. The triplets huddled closer together, their earlier panic replaced by watchfulness. The maintenance worker felt the old discipline settle into his shoulders, the one that said, "Wait, don't rush the reveal." He knelt slightly, so he was level with the girls. "You're doing great," he murmured. Victoria tapped her foot, impatience cracking her poise. "This delay is unacceptable," she snapped toward Marta's back. "End it." Marta returned, face changed. Not triumphant. Resolved. She held the phone out, then the card, as if aligning 2 pieces of a picture. "The number checks out," she said. The cafe erupted in sound, a wave of gasps and murmurs. Victoria's face drained, then flushed. "That's impossible," she said. Marta didn't blink. "It's inactive but authentic," she said. "And it ties to policy language you invoked earlier." She turned to him. "You wrote it, didn't you?" He nodded once. "With a lot of people who cared." The triplets stared up at him, awe mixing with relief. Victoria found her voice again, brittle. "So what? Former titles don't grant authority now." She gestured broadly. "I own this place." Marta faced her. "You don't own the law." She addressed the room. "Based on verified credentials and observed conduct, I'm escalating this to an independent review. No transfers tonight." Applause broke out before anyone could stop it. Phones captured Victoria's rigid stillness as authority slipped from her grip. The maintenance worker stood slowly. "They stay together," he said, not asking. Marta nodded. Victoria whispered, venomous, "You humiliated me." He answered just as quietly, "You did that yourself." Marta signaled the officers to stand down. The crowd loosened, tension releasing in ripples. He felt the victory not as triumph, but as a clearing. The triplets breathed easier, their worlds stitched back together one decision at a time. Outside, rain began tapping the windows, a soft percussion that grounded the room. Inside, staff exchanged looks that said rules applied upward too. Marta gathered her materials. "I'll file immediately," she said. "Child Services will arrange care without separation." She looked at him. "You'll be contacted." He inclined his head. "I'll answer." The concierge finally smiled, a small, proud curve. Victoria turned away, phone already to her ear, whispering damage control. No one followed. The maintenance worker collected the card and slid it back into his wallet, its work done for now. He crouched again, meeting 3 steady gazes. "What happens next?" Sela asked. "He chose honesty. We make sure the right people are watching." Marta paused at the exit, looking back once more, respect softening her expression. "I'm glad you were here," she said. The doors closed behind her. The cafe slowly resumed motion, but something fundamental had shifted. He felt it in the way people looked at him now. Not up, not down, just straight. The girls noticed too. Outside, the rain thickened, washing the glass clean. Inside, the truth had already done the same. He stayed a moment longer, ensuring no one rushed them, ensuring calm held. The system, exposed, had blinked. It wouldn't forgive him for that, he knew. But tonight it had listened. The triplets rose together, ready, fear replaced by fragile trust. He stood with them. Across the room, Victoria disappeared into a corridor meant for power, not accountability. He exhaled, slow and deliberate, feeling the night shift finally begin. The cameras kept rolling. So did the truth. It would travel. By morning, everywhere, and it started here. With witnesses watching. All of them. Present. The applause faded in uneven waves, replaced by a low murmur that felt heavier than noise. People weren't cheering anymore. They were recalibrating. Staff glanced at one another, guests whispered into phones, and the cafe settled into that strange aftershock where everyone knows something irreversible just happened. The maintenance worker felt it too. Victory hadn't arrived like a clean ending. It arrived like exposure, and exposure always demanded a price. Victoria didn't leave immediately. She stood near the service corridor entrance, phone pressed hard to her ear, voice tight and controlled. Whatever damage control she was attempting wasn't going smoothly. Her eyes kept drifting back toward him, sharp with calculation, no longer dismissive but alert. Marta's absence created a vacuum. Authority hadn't vanished, it had only stepped aside, and Victoria knew how to exploit gaps. Security received a quiet signal from her, not an order, an implication. 2 guards repositioned near the cafe exits, subtle enough to look routine, deliberate enough to feel wrong. The triplets noticed instantly. "They're blocking," Noor whispered. He followed her gaze and nodded once. "I see it." The room's mood shifted again, tension crawling back in like a tide refusing to stay out. Phones were still up, but curiosity had thinned into uncertainty. People weren't sure anymore whether this was ending or escalating. Victoria ended her call and turned, smile rebuilt but hollow. "Well," she said lightly, "that was dramatic." She looked at the triplets, then at him. "You've made your point. But we're not finished." He stayed where he was, shoulders relaxed, hands visible. "Marta said no transfers tonight." "From her office," Victoria replied. "Not from mine." She gestured around them. "This is still my property." A chill rippled through the cafe. The concierge took a step closer, uneasy. "Miss Halden, maybe it's best." "Not now," Victoria snapped, eyes never leaving the maintenance worker. "You've already embarrassed me enough." He didn't rise to the bait. "I didn't ask you to say any of it." Victoria laughed, sharp and humorless. "You think this ends because people clapped?" She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "I've buried louder problems." The triplets pressed closer to him again. He felt their fear return, quieter but deeper now, the fear that came when adults smiled instead of shouted. An officer approached, uncertain. "Ma'am, do you want us to clear?" "Yes," Victoria said immediately. "Clear the area. We need privacy." "No," the concierge said again, louder this time. Several heads turned. The word had grown teeth. Victoria stared at him. "Excuse me?" The concierge straightened, something solid in his posture now. "People are watching," he said. "And recording." Victoria scanned the room. Phones. Staff. Guests. Witnesses she couldn't fully control. Her jaw tightened. She pivoted tactics. "Fine," she said. "Then let's be transparent." She faced the room. "This man," she said, pointing at the maintenance worker, "has misrepresented himself. He's exploiting confusion to insert himself into a sensitive situation involving minors." A murmur of doubt rippled through the crowd. He felt it. The narrative shifting, authority reclaiming oxygen. He didn't interrupt. He waited. Victoria continued, voice smooth. "We have no proof of his intentions, only theatrics and an old card." The maintenance worker met her gaze. "Intent isn't proven by speeches," he said. "It's proven by behavior." She smiled thinly. "Exactly," one of the guards stepped forward. "Sir, we're going to need you to step aside." The triplets froze. He raised a hand slightly, not to stop them, but to steady the moment. "On what grounds?" "Failure to comply," the guard said, glancing at Victoria. The cafe held its breath again. He felt the risk now, real and immediate. If they separated him from the girls, the momentum could collapse. Witnesses or not, systems moved fast when nudged. He spoke calmly. "If you remove me, you remove their point of safety," he said. "And that will be on record," Victoria interjected. "They'll be safer without an unknown adult. Then explain," he said, "why you tried to move them without documentation." A few guests murmured agreement. Victoria's composure cracked further. "Enough," she snapped. "You don't get to interrogate me in my own building. You invited questions when you tried to hide answers," he replied. The guard hesitated, looking between them. Marta wasn't here to anchor authority anymore. The crowd was restless. Phones captured everything. Victoria sensed the hesitation and struck harder. "He's a maintenance worker," she said loudly. "That's it. He cleans up after us. Stop pretending he's something else." The words landed like a slap. Silence followed. Thick, uncomfortable. The maintenance worker felt the sting, old and familiar. He breathed through it, aware of how many eyes watched to see if he'd shrink. Instead, he straightened slightly. Not in defiance. In steadiness. "I do clean up," he said evenly, "and tonight I'm cleaning up a mess you didn't expect anyone to see." A ripple of approval moved through the room. Victoria's face hardened. "You're done here." "No," came the concierge's voice. "You are." The words echoed louder than intended. Security froze. Guests stared. Victoria looked around, realizing something fundamental had shifted. The room no longer bent automatically. She stepped back, fury burning behind her eyes. "This isn't over," she said, low and certain. He nodded. "I know." The triplets looked up at him, searching his face. "Are they going to take us?" Selah asked. He crouched, meeting their eyes. "Not tonight," he said. "Not like that." Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows. Inside, the story wasn't done escalating. It was just changing arenas. Victoria turned and walked toward the elevators reserved for power, heels sharp against marble. Every step promised retaliation. The maintenance worker stayed where power never expected resistance to remain, feeling the weight of what he'd challenged settle into his bones. This was no longer just exposure. It was war over narrative. And it was about to go public. Victoria's retreat toward the private elevators didn't feel like defeat. It felt like regrouping. The maintenance worker watched the door slide shut behind her, knowing that whatever came next wouldn't be loud or impulsive. It would be calculated, polished, and aimed at erasing what just happened. Around him, the cafe slowly loosened. Some guests drifted back to their tables, murmuring theories. Others stayed close, phones still up, unwilling to miss the next turn. Staff hovered with a new kind of alertness, aware they were standing inside something that could reshape their own quiet grievances. The triplets didn't move. They stayed close, shoulders brushing his legs, eyes tracking every uniform. Fear had changed form again. Not panic now, but vigilance. "It's not over," Noor said softly. He nodded. "No." "But we're ahead." The concierge approached, lowering his voice. "She's calling her lawyers," he said. "And PR." "Good," he replied. "That means she's worried." The concierge studied him, then nodded once, something like respect settling in. "What do you need?" he considered. "Access logs," he said. "Camera timestamps. And a place we can stand where no one can quietly move us." The concierge glanced around, then gestured toward a wide alcove near the lobby windows. "There," he said. "Open. Visible." They moved together, not rushed, not hidden. The triplets stayed between him and the glass, light spilling over them. Rain streaked the windows, blurring the city beyond into soft, anonymous motion. An officer approached again, posture less aggressive now. "Sir," he said, "we've been told to wait for further instruction." "Good," he replied. "Waiting's honest." The officer hesitated, then nodded and stepped back. He crouched to the triplets' level. "I need you to help me," he said gently. Selah's eyes widened. "How?" "By staying where people can see you," he said, "and telling the same truth every time. Nothing extra." They nodded together, solemn. A staff member brought water and a small plate of fruit without being asked. The worker thanked her quietly. She didn't meet his eyes, but her hands were steady. Phones buzzed. Notifications stacked. He could feel the story escaping the building, leaping from screen to screen. That was good. Momentum mattered. By the way, if you're still with this moment, hit subscribe. What happens next only works because people keep watching. The maintenance worker pulled a folded notepad from his pocket, the kind he used for work orders. He began jotting times, names, positions. Not dramatic. Methodical. The habit calmed him, gave shape to the chaos. The concierge returned with a tablet. "Camera feeds," he said quietly. "Public areas only. But it shows enough." They reviewed together. The worker noted the timestamp when the triplets entered. The moment the aide intercepted them. The direction they were guided. The pause before Victoria arrived. Patterns emerged. Not proof yet, but a spine for it. Marta hadn't returned, but her absence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like preparation. He trusted that. A murmur rose near the elevators. Victoria was back, this time flanked by two sharply dressed attorneys and a woman holding a phone like a weapon. PR. Efficient. Smiling. The room tensed. Victoria addressed the space as if it were a press conference. "Thank you for your patience," she said warmly. "There's been a misunderstanding, and we're correcting it." The maintenance worker stayed silent, letting her speak. These children, Victoria continued, were never in danger. An overzealous response created confusion. We're coordinating with child services to ensure proper care. The PR woman nodded along, already shaping the narrative. The worker stepped forward just enough to be heard. "Then you won't mind explaining why your aide redirected them to a private exit." Victoria's smile didn't falter. "Security protocols." "Off the books?" he asked. The attorney interjected smoothly. "Sir, this isn't the forum." "It is," he said calmly, gesturing to the phones, "because it's already public." The PR woman's eyes flicked to the screens. Calculation replaced confidence. Victoria's tone cooled. "You're making allegations. I'm asking questions," he replied. "With timestamps." The concierge raised the tablet slightly, visible to those nearby. A few guests leaned in, gasps audible as the footage played. Victoria's smile finally cracked. "This is highly inappropriate," she snapped. "So is threatening separation," he said. The triplets stood taller now, courage borrowed from being believed. The attorneys exchanged glances. This wasn't the clean wrap-up they'd planned. Marta appeared at the edge of the lobby then, flanked by another official. Her presence shifted gravity instantly. She met the worker's eyes and gave a small nod. Victoria stiffened. "You again?" Marta didn't respond to her. She addressed the room. "An independent review is underway," she said. "Until it concludes, the children remain together and in open care." A wave of relief swept through the alcove. Victoria's jaw tightened. "You're overstepping," Marta met her gaze. "No," she said. "I'm correcting course." The maintenance worker exhaled slowly, feeling the pieces lock into place. Witnesses. Documentation. Process forced into daylight. He knew this wasn't the end. Victoria would retaliate. Stories would twist. Pressure would come. But the preparation mattered. The setup was done. He looked down at the triplets. "You did great," he said. They smiled. Small, tired, real. Outside, the rain began to ease. Inside, the narrative had shifted lanes, moving somewhere Victoria couldn't fully chase it. And for the first time that night, the maintenance worker felt something like certainty. Not that he'd win easily, but that he'd made it impossible to erase what everyone had seen. The truth was standing in the open now, and it wasn't going back upstairs. The certainty didn't soften him. It sharpened him. As the lobby absorbed Marta's announcement, he stayed alert, aware that momentum could slip if he let the room relax too much. Victoria stood rigid near her attorneys, anger compressed into something colder, more dangerous. She wasn't done. She was deciding how to end it on her terms. Marta conferred quietly with the other official, both of them angled so their bodies formed a subtle barrier between the children and the elevators. The maintenance worker recognized the tactic immediately. Control space. Control outcomes. He mirrored it without thinking, positioning himself so the triplets were never behind him, never boxed in. Guests drifted closer again, sensing a second act. The concierge kept the tablet visible, not playing footage now, just reminding everyone it existed. Evidence had weight even when silent. Victoria stepped forward, voice regained, polished and calm. "For clarity," she said, "my legal team will coordinate directly with Child Services. There's no need for speculation or amateur investigations." He met her gaze. "Transparency isn't speculation." Her eyes narrowed. "You're enjoying your moment." "I'm protecting theirs," he replied, nodding toward the triplets. One of the attorneys leaned in. "Sir, you're exposing yourself to liability." "Truth is a defense," he said. The PR woman raised her phone. "We're issuing a statement," she said to Victoria. "Emphasizing cooperation." "Good," he said. "Make sure it matches the footage." A flicker of irritation crossed her face. She hadn't expected him to understand how narratives hardened. He saw it register, the recalibration. Marta approached him quietly. "We'll need formal statements," she said. "And a temporary placement." "They stay together," he said. She nodded. "That's already noted." The triplets clung less now. They watched adults argue with a new confidence, learning in real time that fear could be negotiated when enough people paid attention. Victoria's phone buzzed. She read, then smiled thinly. "Media's already framing this as confusion," she said aloud. "A misunderstanding resolved by leadership." He gestured to the concierge. The man tapped the tablet, playing a brief clip. Children being guided toward a side exit, timestamp clear. The crowd reacted audibly. Victoria's smile vanished. "Turn that off." The concierge didn't. Marta addressed the room again. "We're moving to the executive lounge for statements," she said. "It's open, recorded, and appropriate." Victoria stiffened. The executive lounge was her territory, but it was also where donors lingered, where reputations lived or died. She hesitated, then nodded. Refusal would look worse. They moved as a group, slow and visible. The maintenance worker walked with the triplets between him and Marta, officers flanking but no longer pressing. The hallway narrowed, tension compressing with it. He felt the hum of cameras, the scrape of shoes, the collective sense that something decisive was approaching. Inside the lounge, glass walls overlooked the lobby. Anyone could see in. Exactly right. Victoria took a seat at the head of the table by habit. Marta didn't correct her. Power would expose itself soon enough. Statements began. Short. Factual. Times, directions, decisions. The maintenance worker spoke last, measured, precise. He didn't editorialize. He described behavior. The difference mattered. Victoria interrupted twice. Marta shut her down once. A donor lingered near the glass, listening. Then another. Their presence changed the temperature. Victoria noticed. Her posture tightened. Marta concluded. "Until review concludes," she said, "the children remain under protective observation with continuity guaranteed." Victoria exhaled sharply. "This is excessive. It's documented," Marta replied. The maintenance worker stood, placing his hands on the table briefly, grounding himself. "You can call this excessive," he said, "or you can call it accountable." Victoria looked at him, something like disbelief flashing through her anger. "You think this ends me?" He shook his head. "I think it ends this." She laughed softly. "You have no idea what you've started. I do," he said. "And I accept it." Marta met his eyes, recognition there. "We'll follow up," she said. The triplets watched Victoria, then him. "Are we okay?" Noor asked. "For now," he said. "Yes." Outside the glass, people filmed. Inside, the truth settled into minutes and signatures, harder to erase than speeches. Victoria gathered her things with brittle composure, already plotting recovery. As she passed him, she paused. "Enjoy being visible," she said. "It won't last." He didn't reply. He watched her leave, understanding that preparation wasn't about winning a room. It was about surviving what came after. Behind him, the triplets breathed easier. Ahead of him, the fight narrowed into process and paper, exactly where he'd wanted it. The lounge doors closed, sealing the moment into record. And the story, now structured and witnessed, moved forward without her permission. The lounge doors closed with a soft, final click, and the sound carried more weight than any raised voice. Inside, the air felt denser, charged with consequence. Outside, the lobby buzzed with speculation, but in here, everything narrowed to process, posture, and the slow grind of accountability. The maintenance worker remained standing for a moment longer, hands resting lightly on the back of his chair, grounding himself in the present. The triplets took the cue and sat too, feet swinging just above the carpet, eyes alert but no longer panicked. They were learning, in real time, how power could be forced to slow down. Marta gathered the signed statements into a neat stack. "These will be uploaded immediately," she said, time-stamped. Unalterable. Victoria's attorneys exchanged tight looks. One of them leaned toward her, whispering urgently. She brushed him off, her expression composed but strained, as if holding a mask in place with sheer will. "This has gone far enough," Victoria said, rising. "You have what you need. We're done." "No," Marta replied, calm but immovable. "We're documenting next steps," Victoria laughed quietly. "You're enjoying this." "I'm doing my job," Marta said. The maintenance worker finally took his seat. He didn't look at Victoria, he looked at the triplets, making sure they were steady. Lena caught his eye and nodded once, as if to say she understood something important had shifted. A donor cleared his throat from near the glass. "Victoria," he said, uncomfortable, perhaps transparency is best. She turned sharply. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns all of us," the donor replied. "Especially if children are involved." Victoria stared at him, then at the others gathering beyond the glass. She realized too late that the executive lounge wasn't an inner sanctum tonight. It was a display case. Marta addressed the room. "Temporary guardianship arrangements will be handled through neutral services," she said. "The children will not be separated. Any attempt to influence that process will be noted." Victoria's jaw tightened. "You're threatening me." "I'm informing you," Marta said. The maintenance worker felt the moment tipping, not with drama, but with inevitability. This was the reversal he'd been building toward, not a triumphant reveal, but a public narrowing of options until only lawful ones remained. Victoria turned to him at last. "You think this makes you important." He met her gaze evenly. "I think it makes them safe." Silence followed, heavy and instructive. A few phones outside lowered, as if people sensed the story had reached its hinge. Marta closed her folder. "We'll escort the children now," she said. "With witnesses." Victoria's voice sharpened. "Absolutely not." "I won't have," Marta raised a hand. "This isn't your decision." For a long second it looked like Victoria might push anyway, her shoulders squared, pride flaring. Then she noticed the donors watching, the staff, the cameras. The cost-benefit calculation flickered across her face. She stepped back. "Fine," she said coldly. "Take them." The word landed like surrender, even if she refused to feel it. The maintenance worker rose smoothly, offering the triplets his hands. They took them without hesitation now. Together, they walked toward the lounge doors, Marta leading, officers flanking but relaxed. As they passed Victoria, she spoke under her breath. "This won't end the way you think." He paused, just long enough to answer quietly. "It already did." Outside the lounge, the lobby parted. People stepped back, not out of fear now, but respect. The children were visible, calm, together. That image mattered more than any statement. Marta guided them toward a quiet seating area near the front windows. Rain streaked the glass less fiercely now, the storm easing as if on cue. A caseworker arrived, neutral, cautious, professional. Introductions were made. Forms signed. Everything slow, deliberate, correct. The maintenance worker stayed close but didn't interfere. This part wasn't about him. Marta pulled him aside. "You understand this will follow you," she said. "Attention. Scrutiny." He nodded. "I expected that." "You didn't have to step in," she added. "I know." She studied him, then offered a small, sincere smile. "I'm glad you did." Across the lobby, Victoria watched from a distance, phone pressed to her ear again, face set. Her world hadn't collapsed, but a fault line had opened, visible to everyone. The maintenance worker returned to the triplets. Selah looked up at him. "Are we really staying together?" "Yes," he said. "That part's real." They smiled, tired, relieved smiles that carried more weight than applause ever could. As the caseworker led them gently toward the exit, the maintenance worker stayed back, hands in his pockets, letting the process work. This was what public exposure looked like when done right, not humiliation for its own sake, but correction in full view. The lobby slowly returned to motion. People dispersed, buzzing with a story they'd witnessed rather than imagined. Victoria turned away at last, heels sharp against marble, retreating into corridors meant for power. This time, they didn't close behind her with certainty. The maintenance worker watched the rain-washed city beyond the glass and exhaled, slow and deep. The reversal had landed. Not with fireworks, but with record, witness, and children walking out together. Exactly as it should. The lobby didn't celebrate after the children were escorted out. It absorbed the moment instead, like a bruise forming beneath polished skin. People drifted away in clusters, voices low, eyes still bright with the afterimage of something that couldn't be unseen. The maintenance worker stayed where he was, near the windows, feeling the echo settle into his chest. Marta returned after a few minutes, her stride calmer now that procedure had teeth. "They're placed for the night," she said. "Together. Neutral location. Staffed." He nodded, relief loosening something tight between his shoulders. "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "There'll be follow-up. Hearings. Reviews." Her gaze flicked toward the elevators. "She won't let this go quietly." "I didn't expect her to," he said. Across the lobby, Victoria Halden stood with her attorneys, posture composed, voice clipped. She looked like someone already rewriting the story in her head, trimming rough edges, assigning blame elsewhere. The difference now was the audience. Staff didn't avert their eyes anymore. Guests lingered openly. Power had lost its privacy. A donor approached Marta, speaking in hushed tones. Another joined. Their presence changed the temperature again, cooler, more cautious. Victoria noticed and stiffened. She ended her call and crossed the lobby, heels striking with purpose. "This ends tonight," she said, stopping a few feet from the maintenance worker. Her voice was steady, but the effort showed. "You've had your spectacle." He met her gaze without stepping back. "You had options." Her eyes narrowed. "You humiliated me in my own building." "You humiliated yourself," he said evenly. "I just didn't look away." A ripple of murmurs followed, softer than before, but unmistakable. Victoria turned to Marta. "You're enjoying this," she said. "Don't pretend otherwise." Marta shook her head. "I'm documenting it." "Same thing," Victoria snapped. The maintenance worker felt the moment crystallize. This wasn't about winning further. It was about ending the pattern. He spoke calmly, carrying just far enough. "You don't have to like how this went," he said. "You just have to stop doing it." For a second, Victoria looked genuinely startled. Not angry. Considering. The donors watched. Staff waited. Cameras hovered at the edges. She exhaled, sharp. "You think this makes you righteous." "I think it makes the next decision harder to abuse," he replied. Silence held. Then one of the donors cleared his throat. "Victoria," he said, uncomfortable, "we should review our protocols." Her jaw tightened. "We will," she said. "Internally," Marta interjected, externally as well. Victoria's eyes flashed, then dimmed. She nodded once, curt. "Fine." It wasn't contrition. It was concession. And in rooms like this, that was transformation enough to matter. She turned back to the maintenance worker. "You forced my hand," she said quietly. "You should understand what that costs." "I do," he said. "I chose it." She studied him, as if seeing him clearly for the first time, not as labor, not as nuisance, but as obstacle. Then she stepped past him, the corridor swallowing her up without ceremony. The lobby breathed out. Marta gathered her things. "I'll be in touch," she said. "And I'm sorry it took pressure." He shook his head. It took witnesses." She smiled faintly and walked away. The concierge approached, extending a hand. "For what it's worth," he said, "we'll remember this." "Remember the kids," he replied, shaking it. As the lobby thinned, the maintenance worker collected his things. His shift was long past. No one told him to clock out. No one told him to leave. The rules felt different now, loosened by light. He stepped outside. The rain had stopped completely, the street shining clean. He stood there for a moment, listening to the city resume its rhythm, sirens distant, traffic steady. His phone buzzed with a message he hadn't expected yet, a caseworker's update, brief and reassuring. Together, safe. Tomorrow. He pocketed the phone and exhaled. Behind him, through the glass, the hotel returned to business, but not quite the same. Staff moved with straighter backs. Guests spoke softer. Somewhere upstairs, protocols were being rewritten under pressure they could no longer ignore. He didn't linger. Visibility had served its purpose. He walked toward the bus stop, boots wet, shoulders light. He wasn't going back to obscurity. He was going back to life, altered. Tomorrow would bring questions, headlines, maybe consequences. He accepted all of it. Because tonight, 3 children slept without being separated. And a woman who'd never been challenged in public had been. That was enough. For now. The bus stop was quiet, lit by a single flickering street lamp that hummed like it was tired too. He stood beneath it, hands in his jacket pockets, replaying the night not in images but in sensations, the weight of 3 small hands gripping his sleeve, the shift in a room when power faltered, the sound of applause that hadn't felt like celebration so much as recognition. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Longer this time. The caseworker explained the next steps. Emergency kinship evaluation, temporary guardianship options, counseling support. No promises yet. Just structure. Just a path. He read it twice, slower the second time, then closed his eyes and breathed. Across town, in a quiet building that smelled faintly of disinfectant and warm food, 3 girls lay in beds lined up side by side. They weren't asleep yet. They were whispering, replaying the night in their own way, counting moments where fear had stopped and something else had started. They kept the light on. Together. The bus arrived with a sigh of brakes. He stepped on, nodding to the driver, and took a seat near the back. The city slid by in rain-clean reflections, storefronts glowing, people moving on with lives untouched by what had unfolded inside a hotel lobby hours earlier. But some things don't need a crowd to matter. The next morning came with consequences, just as he'd expected. Articles surfaced. Careful at first, then bolder. Questions raised after hotel incident. Child Services review triggered by witness accounts. Victoria Halden's name appeared alongside phrases like oversight and review. Not condemnation, not yet, but attention. And attention changed behavior. At the hotel, staff talked openly now, not loudly, but honestly. The concierge corrected a supervisor without flinching. A server asked about reporting channels and got an answer. Small things. But small things were how systems learned. Marta called that afternoon. Her tone was different, less guarded, more direct. She confirmed the review had expanded. External auditors. Policy evaluation. She didn't apologize again. She didn't need to. Her actions spoke now. The maintenance worker returned to his routine that evening, tool belt on, moving through service corridors where the hum of machines drowned out gossip. A few coworkers nodded differently than before. One clapped him on the shoulder, brief and quiet. No speeches. No pedestal. He didn't want one. Days passed. Meetings followed. Forms multiplied. He attended when asked, answered when needed, never oversharing, never hiding. The card stayed in his wallet untouched. It had done its job. Then came the call that mattered. The caseworker's voice was careful but warm. The girls had asked for him by name, not because they believed he could fix everything, but because he'd stayed. The evaluation would proceed with him included. Slowly. Properly. Together. He sat at his small kitchen table after the call, the same one where he drank tea alone most nights. The chair across from him was empty now. but not in the same way. Possibility filled it. He thought about Victoria, about how power reacted when it was watched. He didn't wish her ruin. He wished her limits. Limits were how people learned to see others. That night he brewed 3 cups of tea instead of 1. He set them out, then smiled at himself and shook his head. Not yet. Soon. The story didn't end with applause or punishment. It ended with systems bending toward fairness because they'd been forced into the open. It ended with children sleeping without fear. It ended with a man returning to work unchanged in values, but unhidden. And it ended with a question, not an answer. So now I'll ask you directly, what should the next story be about? Subscribe and don't miss our next story. They evicted the quiet mechanic until the power grid failed. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?